This is the Awake Athlete Podcast. I'm Jessica Mikowski, mindset coach, implant-powered athlete on a mission to guide all who are ready to great heights in sports performance and life. Through the 10,000-foot view, I share teachings of living awake with the sole purpose that we all realize our innate power to be the masters of our minds. Welcome back to Season 5 of the Awake Athlete Podcast, The Interviews. Today, I'm excited to chat with Emma Grant, a professional, or as I was just alerted, a privateer, gravel rider, coach, and dedicated yogi with a fascinating journey in sport. Originally a competitive runner, Emma transitioned to cycling through the UK Sport Talent ID program, Girls for Gold. She's endured incredible highs and lows, including 2 major surgeries, but her resilience has led her to new heights in gravel racing. Emma and I connected through my book, Awake Athlete, When Mastery is Your Only Option. And today we'll dive into the mindset and yoga practices that have fueled her journey, exploring how she's found strength in both struggles and triumph. Emma, so good to see you. Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for that intro. You did a good internet stalk homework.
Yeah, a little bit. Little stock, just enough. But I know a lot about you too, because we had the pleasure of meeting up in Encinitas this year. I can't remember when it was. I feel like I was either coming back from a trip or just about to leave for a trip. But I would love for you to share that story about how you and I came together, like how you found yoga, and then eventually how you found my book that led us to connect.
Yeah. How did I find yoga? Like most athletes, it was going to a class for the sake of the physical benefits. And I was living in Asheville in North Carolina for a season. And just around the corner, they had this awesome yoga. It was like a community center. So it was like donation based. And my teammate and I weren't earning a salary that year, so we were like super stingy with money. So we would just like roll up $1 bills and pop them in and like hope that nobody saw and they just thought we were giving $10 donations. I feel really bad about that. Anyway, so we got like to go to yoga every single day for $1.
Yeah, that's great. But that's that's what it's about, right? It's like donation. You give what you can. And in the truth, it's like you give what you can. But isn't it funny how it's like we just carry this like, it wasn't enough. I'm not enough. I shouldn't be here.
I know. So now I feel indebted to yoga teachers. Give back. So that was where I really noticed the physical benefits of doing yoga, but really like so untapped into the practice in terms of how it could benefit the whole rest of my being. And then I had a teammate that introduced me to Yoga Glow when we were just like racing and on the road. And it was a really good like online platform that had tons of different classes. And then through that, I just started finding teachers that I liked. And I found Tiffany Cruikshank, who, so I followed her work for a long time, and then I followed her business yoga medicine online. And then I was pretty determined to do my yoga teacher training, but just kind of dabbled in online courses. So through her, I did the yoga teacher training for athletes, but I haven't finished up any kind of formal amount of hours that would certify me to teach legally. And then I was kind of the mindset of like going back to New Zealand, I could probably wing it without having, 200 or 500 hours of teaching and just like teach a yoga for athletes on the beach kind of class. But yeah, that's my yoga journey so far.
And then how did you find me? How did you find Awake Athlete? Did you find the podcast first?
I just remember being on a training ride and I'd like downloaded a ton of podcasts for a long ride. And then it was just on on Spotify shuffling through, and yours just popped up, and yeah, just listened to it. And I just was like, this is what I need. It was like everything I'd learned through yoga and found it hard to transfer into a competitive environment. You were just kind of filling that gap for me.
And yeah, that leads me to a question, which let's see how I can articulate this. Because you're a very competitive athlete. You were a professional road racer. Now you're doing gravel, which you just explained to me. When you go from being a professional road racer, you're on a team. And then when you go out on your own, which is like more gravel riding, you become a privateer. That's what they consider you in the world of professional cycling. So you have the yoga, and I know you're into the mindset piece, but it is bridging this gap between like you're innately competitive. In yoga, we would say like that's your dharma, is to be competitive. How do you reconcile the two? Like, I guess what I'm saying is, how do you use yoga to your advantage as a competitive athlete? But body, I think, is the easy answer, but I'm really curious about the mind.
Yeah, I think it's the contrasts. And in order for me to really channel that intensity, the competitive fire, I need the opposite. So for me, yoga now is more about slowing down, being still, the yin side of it. So the more I can nurture that, the more I can tap into the totally opposite side of it. So, I mean, yeah, for me to go to a really fast-paced vinyasa class just doesn't happen. I go to like slow flows, restoratives, sound baths, like anything like that. It's, yeah, forcing me to slow down.
Were you ever drawn to like the super strong, like power practices and things like that? Or was it a natural pull to say, I need to like just lay on the ground in one pose for 7 minutes?
In the off season, I am drawn to the more brisk classes. But if I have the urge to do that during a heavy training block, like I'm probably not training hard enough, or like I'm running off kind of a wiry energy that like I'm feeling wired and tired, and it feels easier to just kind of keep the momentum of like go, go, go versus like let my body do what it knows it needs to do and just like be still.
When you're racing, and you've been on a bit of a streak, I've been watching you winning. When you're in that, like just pushing hard, competitive, front of the pack, wanting to win, what does yoga allow you to tap into during those moments? Is there a deeper connection that's been made, or are you just really in that fire?
I think yoga helps me to be the observer, so I can kind of just zoom out of what's going on externally and shift my focus internally. But then, like in a gravel race, there's so much going on. You can't just put all your attention internally because you're going to crash, like you need to balance when you need to be just like looking for good lines, being awake and ready, as you like to call it, on a descent, or if you're like on a long climb where you're pacing for an hour matters, and like you really need to just be tuning into physical sensations so you don't blow up. Especially, I've raced a lot at altitude this year. So yoga kind of helps me transition between external attention, internal attention, and then just coming back to that like calm center within that's always there. That I remember when we were having coffee, we were talking about that like whatever's going on externally, like you have that within you all the time and it's limitless. So just, yeah, finding that before I go into a race, then it's easier to tap into once you're in the heat of the moment.
Do you have any rituals before you race that help you get there?
So many. Like
We want them all. We want them all.
My morning routine is so elaborate that like it's kind of beyond the joke. And we race at like 6 a.m. quite a lot of times. So I'm like, am I getting up at 3 just to like go through this extensive ritual routine? Yeah.
So what are you doing in those hours?
I'll spend at least 20 minutes like moving my body. I'll try and meditate for at least 15 minutes. And I've kind of weaned myself off a guided meditation, which I think we also talked about when we were in Encinitas. And now I can't stand the sound of a voice when I'm meditating, which is funny.
Good. I think it's a good sign. Guided meditations are great. They're a great place to start. But I remember that now in our conversation, you were like, really, one of the things that kept coming up was like, I'm craving this calm that you talk about, Jess. I'm craving more. And I'm like, okay, well then you have to lose the guided meditations. You have to do it yourself. And then, wow, that was a pretty quick turnaround to where you are now.
Yeah, so now I just have a gong that sounds. And I like to journal a little bit. So yeah, even on a race morning, I won't journal as much, but it'll be more like just getting clear on what I want, how I want myself to show up on the day. And I always read. So race morning, I like at least to read a chapter. Yeah.
Do you have a go-to pre-race book?
Depends on what I'm reading. Like if what I'm reading is going to help me get my head in the game for the race, I'll keep reading that. But I also always travel around with a book called Mind Gym, and they're super short chapters. So I'll just pick a chapter and read it.
Do you think there's something about having that, like that familiar routine, even on race morning? Because a lot of times like routines get thrown out with race morning because people are chasing sleep, right? Like I'm only going to sleep like 5 hours. Like I have to get up at the last possible minute. But do you think there's a part of that familiarity of that routine that's really like nurturing to your nervous system before you go into something that's going to be so fast and furious?
Yeah, it's so grounding. Like, and I think it just, like, you don't want a race to feel like a training day, but I always like verge on the side of being like nervous, borderline anxious. So the more I can make it feel like a training day, the better. Like I'm trying to always just bring myself down a little bit. So as many practices that you do routinely like makes race day just kind of feel like another day on the bike, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that perspective and that practice. Okay, switching gears a little bit. You're also a coach. So I'm curious about what are some common, maybe just one that comes to mind, common like blocks or limiting beliefs that you see within the athletes you coach, or even the athletes around you. As a coach, you have a different perspective. And so, yeah, what do you see that as a commonality in our limiting beliefs?
I would say like I'm learning men and women are very different in terms of their beliefs. Like with the women I've coached are definitely a lot more self-critical. And my role, I find, is just guiding them to believe in themselves. And believing that they're capable. And the guys, it's kind of the other way around. It's like their egos are a little bit more inflated, and it's like, shall I humble you or shall I just let the sport humble you? So yeah, but that's a generalization. But in general, like, that's what I kind of find.
So for looking at self-belief, how do you help them recognize that they can cultivate it?
I think just the consistency of training blocks and just like seeing what they can string together and the progress they can make, that in itself is kind of reinforcing. But it has to come from them. Like, I can't tell them how capable they are. Like, they have, it's a feeling, you know? So I think just going out and racing, dealing with adversity, and like, that's kind of gravel racing in a nutshell. Like, shit happens, you know, like you puncture, you crash, you know, like it's endless, the possibility for things going wrong. So like, just, yeah, people pulling through in those kind of tricky days, like that's what makes them know that they're capable. So yeah, you've got to just go out there and experience it. You can talk the talk and it's just not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, like at the end of the day, we have to step into the unknown.
And that's what racing is. And yeah, a lot of athletes get so caught up in the data, and that gives them a sense of being able to predict what they can do, which is nice. It's a nice idea to be able to think you can predict what's going to happen. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's why you race, because it's exciting. You don't know.
From the perspectives of yoga being the science of the mind, what has helped you in mindset? Because you've been through your struggles, some major surgeries, injury. I think you're working through something right now. It seems for you as an athlete, but also as a coach, and speaking in general to the athletes who are listening to this, because we're all going to have, as I say, like our turn. Like it's my turn to have this or that or whatever going on. What are some pieces of mindset or qualities of mindset that can help us move through those times of injury or downtime with a little bit more ease?
I think it's finding a place of non-resistance and acceptance of what is. Like right now, it's been quite a turbulent month, and I'm actually like, I needed this. Like, so I feel like I got this test because I needed it. So it's just kind of, yeah, accepting everything that gets thrown your way, and turning it into a positive. Not even a positive, but like a belief that it's good for me and I'll be stronger for it. Yeah, that's kind of the mindset.
Was that something that you're just kind of ingrained to look at, like a bigger picture, or did you have to train yourself to look at that bigger picture? Did you always navigate injury in this way of like, okay, there's an opportunity here. What am I learning?
Not at all. I think like in the past I had some pretty bad chronic hip things, that was basically this like blocked iliac artery, and I was like, I don't deserve this. Like, I do all the right things, I do all the off the bike work, like, why, woe is me, I do not deserve this injury. Like all these other cyclists that do like bugger all off the bike and they don't get this. Like, yeah, I was kind of had that attitude, and then I was like, I think I just got beaten down by a lot of things, and then I got to the point where it's like, no, every testing time, like I vow to kind of be stronger for it. Like, even if it's not physically, it's mentally, it's going to make me stronger. And yeah, I'm trying to bring that attitude to the last month, where like I made some questionable decisions to push through stuff, and I'm like, okay, my body's probably not stronger for it, but at least my mind is going to be stronger for this.
Yeah, and just pulling out those things. You know, it's there's no like secret, right? It's just that moment where we wake up and we say like, there has to be another way. And I don't know what sutra it is, but in the Yoga Sutras, the version I have by Swami Satchidananda, and he talks about how, the way that life bumps us around and like pushes us down, it's all there so that we stand up one day and go, okay, no more. Like, I'm not going to be a victim to this anymore. There has to be another way. There has to be a bigger perspective. There has to be something that I'm not seeing. There has to be something, because just living a life where I'm punished with injury or whatever, financial distress, it's all there. Like, we hear that a lot, right? Like, it's all for you, but it really is for you, so that you can realize that you're strong enough to shift a perspective and then see what that brings, right? Which is also the unknown, shifting a perspective. As an athlete, as we close up this interview, what would be one tip that you could give athletes as far as like mindset training, either a practice or a quality that you feel is important to cultivate that will have a benefit to performance?
I don't know. I think about language a lot. And the language I use with my athletes in coaching, and then just the language I use with myself. Like, and I always try and bridge the gap between like coaching talk and like how a yoga teacher might talk to a class. And I know, like, yoga teachers, like, training is like, it's an offering, like, I invite you to do this. Like, no one's making you, it's all on you. Like, you want the person to be motivated to do it for them, versus like sometimes training language as a coach can be like, here is your prescribed training. Like, it's very kind of, I don't know, sterile language. And I'm like, I don't really like that. So I want athletes to have the autonomy to like be doing it for the right reasons, not because their coach is making them. So I don't know. I'm very conscious about the language I use. And then, the language I use with myself. So sometimes when I'm doing a hard workout, like, and I kind of get very critical and down on myself, and I'm like, oh, you should be able to do this. You should be able to do that. And I'm kind of like shifting to it like, oh, you could like hold another 10 more watts. Just give it a go. Like, kind of just going a bit gentler on myself, and then seeing if I'm like just able to find more ease in the effort just by talking to myself that way. So I don't know. That was a bit of a ramble, but language matters is what I'm saying.
Language does matter. And the difference in what you just described in that workout is you're not going to go any faster, or you're not going to be any stronger when you're beating yourself down. But when you get into that era of curiosity, maybe I could do another 10 watts. Like, I'm just going to see what I can do. Oh, I did 3, but you're not going any slower when you do those things. Like, you're propelling yourself forward. And so, yes, language matters. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you, Emma, for being on the show today. How do people follow you or find out, more about you?
I guess the gram is probably the good one to go to. So I'm at EM Grant, the number 1 on Instagram. And then I coach for the company I coach for is called Basecamp. So they can have a look at Basecamp, and if they're interested in dabbling in gravel or some winter training, Basecamp is a pretty good option to have an online community for the winter.
Awesome.
So that's worth checking out.
Good. I'll put a link to that in the description for this. But thanks so much. It was great to see you. I appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Are the messages in this podcast resonating with you? Is there a spark that has been flamed and a part of you that is craving more? Get over to yogitriathlete.com and discover how we are forging a new breed of athlete through one-on-one coaching, our squad community, and once-in-a-lifetime adventures to some of the most extraordinary places on earth. Being a member of Yogi Triathlete means you will be awake and ready for all that comes your way. So head over there now, because life waits for no one. So what are you waiting for?